Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a new project that I did over the past weekend. I made a surveillance security system using Raspberry Pi and Python. Surveillance security system is very essential nowadays to secure our house or workplace, especially when we are not at home or away from the workplace. I find this is a great idea to build my own surveillance system. This is not a very complex or tough project. If you watch the video till the end, you will be able to make your own surveillance system by yourself. So let's get started. Here are the hardware components I used in my project. I used Raspberry Pi 4 as a main brain of this security system, which comes with 4 GB of RAM. You can use any other version of Raspberry Pi as well, 3 or 2. I used Raspberry Pi camera version 2.1. I used one PIR motion sensor for detecting motion, one 16 GB of microSD card for loading Raspbian images. Also, I used a bunch of wires to connect the PIR motion sensor with Raspberry Pi GPIO pins. For the software, I used the latest Raspbian image, which is Raspbian Buster Lite, as an operating system for the Raspberry Pi 4. And I used the Python 3 as a programming language to program my entire surveillance security system's logic and functionalities. Now I'm going to write the latest Raspbian image to my microSD card. So for that, I inserted the microSD card to my computer and I have downloaded and installed SD card formatter software for formatting my microSD card. So here in the SD card formatter, I have to choose the appropriate drive and then click on format to format my microSD card. Once the format is done, I will go to the web browser and then I will go to raspberrypi.org. So from here, I will download the latest Raspbian image. Go to download section. According to your operating system, you can download the Raspberry Pi imager. In my case, it is Windows, so I'm downloading the Windows version of it. Once the download is done, open the installer and install the software. After installation, open the Raspberry Pi imager and choose the operating system. So I will choose the Raspbian Lite because I don't need the GUI version of the operating system, only the console mode will work for me. So I select the Raspberry Lite. And after selecting the operating system, I will select the SD card. So this is the SD card volume. So once the SD card is selected, now click on write to write the entire operating system to the micro SD card. So this will take a while. Now as you can see, the entire operating system has been written to the micro SD card. Now once it is done, we have to take out the micro SD card from the computer and reinsert it again. And close this software. After we reinsert the micro SD card, we will open the File Explorer and then we open the micro SD card volume. As you can see, all the operating system related files are copied into the micro SD card. Now here in this directory, we will be creating two more files. One file for enabling SSH, another one for enabling network. Because this is required while we'll be power on the Raspberry Pi, the network will be always connected to our Wi-Fi system and we will be able to do SSH onto Raspberry Pi. So for that, first we copy this particular section of text, open a new notepad and paste it here. So this will enable the network in Raspberry Pi. So here you have to change according to your configuration. So first you have to put the country code here. So I'm currently living in Switzerland, so I put CH. And here in the SSID, you have to put your own Wi-Fi SSID, and in the PSK, you have to put your Wi-Fi password. So now once you enter your details, save this file into this micro SD card volume with a name WPA underscore supplicant .conf and change the save as type to all type. So this will remain the conf as an extension. Okay, now save this file into the micro SD card. Now similarly, open an empty file and just save this empty file to the micro SD card with the name SSH and keep the type as all. Now click on save. Now if I go to the micro SD card volume, refresh, so I can see a 0 KB file with the name SSH has been created and WPA underscore supplicant.conf file has been created. Now till this section, your micro SD card for the Raspberry Pi is ready. This is the hardware schematic of the surveillance security project. As you can see, this is a very simple schematic. The camera module is being attached to the Raspberry Pi in the camera port, and the PIR sensor is connected to the Raspberry Pi I/O pins. Pin number 2, which supplies plus 5 volt of Raspberry Pi, is connected to the power pin of PIR sensor. Ground pin of PIR sensor is connected to pin number 6 of Raspberry Pi. And the data pin of PIR sensor, which is connected to the Raspberry Pi pin number 11, which is GPIO 17. This is the final hardware setup where camera is connected with the Raspberry Pi. The micro SD card is prepared with the latest Raspbian image and it is also inserted to the Raspberry Pi. The PIR motion sensor is also connected to the Raspberry Pi via GPIO pins. The Raspberry Pi will provide power to the PIR motion sensor, and the PIR motion sensor works or detects the motion in 120-degree angle. So the best place for setting up these devices at the corner of the room. Now let's power the Raspberry Pi and go for the programming. After power on the Raspberry Pi will be automatically connected to our Wi-Fi system. So we need to get its IP address so that we can connect the Raspberry Pi over SSH from remote machine. In order to get the IP address of the connected Raspberry Pi, we need to connect our router admin console. So you will get the details how to connect your own router admin console from your router documentation. Once the router admin console is connected, we need to go to LAN setting. And in the LAN setting, you should be able to find some option called client list. So that means how many clients are connected to our routers, we can get the list of the details. So as I can see, our Raspberry Pi, the name of the device is connected to our router with this IP address. So going forward, I'll be using this particular IP address to connect our Raspberry Pi over SSH. Now we will connect our Raspberry Pi through SSH client. So I used MOBA Xterm SSH client to connect our Raspberry Pi. So I will start a new session. Now here I will put the IP address of the Raspberry Pi that we already got from the router admin console. And then I will specify the default username of Raspberry Pi operating system, which is Pi. Now connect. This will ask for the password. The default password of Raspbian image is Raspberry. Now after logging, to the Raspberry Pi, the first thing that we need to do is to enable the camera module which is attached with Raspberry Pi. So in order to do that, you have to go to sudo raspi config. Now this will open the configuration center of the Raspberry Pi. Now from here, you have to go to the interfacing option, select, and then select the camera option. And here you need to choose yes, we'd like to enable the camera interfacing option. And now this will enable the camera. So once the camera module has been enabled, we need to reboot the system. It will ask for rebooting the system. Just select yes. Now after the reboot, the camera module is enabled in the Raspberry Pi for taking image or the video. Now before we start doing the Python coding, we need to do some basic configurations and the library setup. First, we have to upgrade and update the operating system of the Raspberry Pi. So first we will go with the update. So now this will update the operating system of the Raspberry Pi. Now once the update is done, we have to upgrade the operating system with all these updated files. Sorry, it was sudo upgrade. Now this will upgrade the entire operating system. You have to put yes, and now this will take a while to upgrade the entire operating system. Now once the upgrade is done, we need to install some essential libraries for our security system. The first one is the library for the camera module. Sudo apt-get install python 3 PyCamera. So now this library is essential for PyCamera running on Python 3. Now the PyCamera library is installed. Now we will be installing another library called gpack. Now this library will be used to convert H.264 video format to MP4. After installing gpack library, we will be installing rpy.gpio library for accessing all the GPIO pins of Raspberry Pi. Now after installing all the libraries, we have to create some directories here. So now we have to check first where we are. We are at home/pi. So here we will be creating the first directory called Python code. So inside the Python code, we will be creating our Python file. And here under the Python code, we will be creating one more directory called capture. So now we are ready with the operating system configuration, and we can start with our Python coding. Before we start the programming, let's see how the algorithm for the surveillance security system will work. The code will continuously scan the PIR motion sensor input. The PIR motion sensor provides the input in binary form. If it detects the motion, it will send 1, otherwise 0. If code detects any motion from the PIR sensor, it will turn on the camera and record video for 10 seconds. You can manually change this timing from 10 to 20 or 30 or so on. Once the recording has been done, it will convert the video file format to MP4 because the camera of the Raspberry Pi creates the video in H.264 RAW format. Before we send this video file over the email as an attachment, we have to convert this into MP4. Once the format has been converted to MP4, then we will send out an email with this MP4 video file as an attachment to the specified email address. And once the email has been sent successfully, we will be removing all these files. That includes MP4, H.264 files, everything. And then it will again start scanning. So this program will be running in an infinite while loop. Now let's do the programming for the same algorithm. This is the entire code of my Raspberry Pi based surveillance system. The name of the file is surveillance.py. In the beginning of the code, I used all the necessary libraries. As you can see, I have imported all the email related libraries for generating email messages. Then I used PyCamera libraries for camera module. Then I use date time libraries and the time libraries for file related operation, and GPIO library for accessing GPIO of Raspberry Pi. This section, I defined the GPIO ports. As you can see, I use the GPIO pin number 11 of Raspberry Pi in the input mode, which is connected with my PIR motion sensor. In this section, I defined all the email related parameters like subject, body, the SMTP server, which is Gmail SMTP server, the SMTP port, which is 587 for Gmail in the TLS mode, then the username, the account which is used to send notification if motion has been detected, the Gmail account password, and then the receiver email, who should receive the email from this system. Now in this section, I defined some parameters for the file which will be generated after the video recording has been done. So as you can see, the name of the file is surveillance and the format of the file is MP4. I also use the current date and time, and then I will add this current date and time after the file name so that I can understand when the file was recorded and sent. And this is the file path where I'm actually saving the file. Then you can see this is the method for sending email messages with attachment. Then I have one more method for capturing video. This method will capture the video in H.264 format and the duration of the video is 10 seconds. Now this you can change according to your requirement. Then this method will remove all the files that's been created by this code, like all these video files, H.264 or the MP4 formats. Now from here, the actual code gets started. Now first, I initialize the camera module. Now you should use this line only once in this code because we cannot initiate the camera inside the while loop, otherwise it will throw error. So we have to make sure that we are using this initialization part of the camera once in this code only. After that, we will start with the infinite while loop. So inside the while loop, we are continuously scanning the input signals from PIR motion sensor. So once the PIR motion sensor detects any motion, it sends 1, otherwise it will send 0. So now if the variables gets the value 1, then first I'm capturing the video, which is for 10 seconds. Then I'm waiting for 2 more seconds. Then here in this line, I'm actually converting the H.264 video format to MP4 format. And after that, we are renaming this raw MP4 format with the specified file name and saving the file into the specified file path. After that, we are sending the email message with this particular file as an attachment. Then waiting for 2 more seconds and then removing all the files that are generated by this code. After all these operations are done, the controller will go back to this line and start scanning the input signal from PIR motion sensor. Now this is the entire code. Now I will copy this code to my Raspberry Pi, then I will run this code and then I will show you the result. Before we finally run the Python code, we need to perform one more task. Open a web browser and go to myaccount.google.com/less-secure-apps and log in with your sender email address, the email address which will be used in our Python code to send email notification. And here you can see there is one option, allow less secure apps. It is currently off, so we need to turn it on. So now this will enable Gmail account to send email notification from less secure apps, which is our Raspberry Pi system. So now we are good to go with running the Python code. I copied the Python file into my Raspberry Pi under the python_code directory. So here is the file, and now I will run this file. Python 3 surveillance. Now it started the infinite while loop. So now if PIR motion sensor detects any motion, it will send the signal 1 to Raspberry Pi, and then Raspberry Pi will start capturing video, and then it will send the video file over the email. So now let's make a motion. So as you can see, the motion has been detected. So now it capturing the video. The video capturing is done. So it's already convert the video to MP4, and now it starts sending the email notification. Now email has been sent. So after sending the email, it will remove all the files generated by the code, and then it will again continue with the while loop and start getting the signal from PIR sensor. So now if I check the email notification into the receiver email address, so I can see that in the receiver email address I received an email, and if I open that email, I can see a motion has been detected. This is the body, and this is the attached video file. So I need to download it first, and if I open the file, I can see the motion has been detected first, and then it captured the video for 10 seconds. This is the complete Raspberry Pi based surveillance security system. You will get all the links in the description for downloading necessary softwares and the Python source code. Thank you for watching my video, and stay safe.